Hello everybody and welcome to the Aviation Show, brought to you as always by the fabulous Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona. But we're not there because we're here in Bristol at Aerospace Bristol with Professor Sir Iain Grey, who's going to be showing us around the museum that you've worked so hard to help us set up, haven't you?
Yeah, well, brilliant. Well, welcome very much to Aerospace Bristol. I mean, our objective with this museum is very much to tell the Bristol story, the aerospace story. It's very much about the people as well as the products, and it's about the way people worked. Wonderful just to hear in the background some people using some of the
very hands-on museum,
hands-on stuff. And our key objective actually is to attract young people, to become the next generation of aviation, aerospace folk. Anyway, where we start with Sir George White. We start with the Bristol tram. It's quite interesting if you think about aerospace companies going back to 1910, 1915. Most aerospace companies in the UK were started by pilots, people that wanted to learn to fly, and the companies were named after them. The Harry Hawkers, the Tom Sopwiths, the A.V. Rose. And Bristol has a somewhat different origin. And Bristol was started by a Bristol businessman called Sir George White. And Sir George White owned the Bristol Tramways Company. And he was a wealthy guy, a big philanthropist in the Bristol area. And he saw one of these air shows up in Blackpool and saw these flying machines. And he had the inspiration that if he built an aerospace factory here in Bristol, that might attract more people onto his tramway. So it's a very different genesis to some of the other aerospace companies. And so he called it the Bristol Aeroplane Company. So one of the few companies that wasn't named after a person.
A place rather than a person, yes.
So that's interesting in its own right. So what we're trying to do here is we tell that story as we go around of Sir George White, how the company formed, how it moved on. And we're in the first bay of this is the start of the company. I mean, if we start to wander around a little bit, there's a model, there's a replica up there. That's the Bristol box kite.
Yep.
So that was the very first Bristol aeroplane. That's obviously a subscale model. There is a full-size replica flying in the Shuttleworth collection, and a full-size replica in the Bristol Museum. But Bristol box kite, that was the start of the company. And we have some amazing photographs, early video footage. I mean, we just see here some of the early footage of the Bristol box kite flying, and some lovely pictures, the drawings and things, but people working in that era. So we start telling that story as we move around, and
And I guess it's really just showing almost how simple aviation started.
Absolutely.
And then as we start wandering through, in a little while, we'll see how complicated it can get.
You see how, and that story of how people work, whether it be in the design office, whether it be in the factory, the woodworkers, the skilled trades and everything. It's fascinating to see it. The Bristol Aerospace Bristol does house one of the best archive. One of the best digital footage of old glass plate negatives in our archive. We've got a tremendous collection of glass plate negatives. I personally, you could just spend hours just working your way through this great digital archive of the Bristol Aeroplane Company. One of the engineers we had working in the Bristol company in the early days was Henry Coanda. The Coanda effect is still talked about to these days. And Henry Coanda was one of the early engineers at the Bristol Aeroplane Company. As we kind of move around, we move into products. So this is a Bristol fighter. I tend to think of a Bristol fighter as the Spitfire of World War One. It was a really, really great project. The chief designer of this aircraft was a man called Frank Barnwell. Frank Barnwell and his brother Harold were the two brothers that achieved the first heavier-than-air flight in Scotland. The only UK engineers that I can remember that were featured in the Smithsonian Museum in the US. So Frank Barnwell is of international fame. Interestingly, this is a replica. It was built by apprentices to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bristol Aeroplane Company. But suspended from the ceiling there is the skeleton, the structure. That is an original Bristol fighter structure. So you strip away all the canvas and dope, and that's what the structure of the Bristol fighter looks like.
Because the Bristol fighter sort of has that, like you say, it's that sort of Spitfire image of this sort of pinnacle aircraft, big, manoeuvrable. But we have to talk about the Scout, mainly because a buddy of mine's written a book on it.
All right.
Matt Willis has done quite a bit of work on it. But this aircraft as well plays a very important part, just sort of in keeping the Royal Flying Corps in the fight, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The two aircraft together are true icons of this era, and it's what those early Bristol days are really known for. These open cockpit military machines, and some terrific technology developments. Just think in terms of the time scale for this versus what we saw just 10 years earlier. I mean, the developments have been incredible. So you kind of work our way around. Again, talk a lot about women in aerospace. A lot of talk about women in aerospace these days. We're going back to the 1920s and 30s, and the doping factories, all the drawing offices. Huge element of women at work. So again, this theme of the people that worked for the Bristol Aeroplane Company comes through enormously. Telling the story how Filton grows. It started as the Bristol and Colonial Airplane Company, develops different factories. It subsumes the engine company from Cosmos Engineering. We see things like Bristol starting to diversify into other things, but on the radiator grille of this lorry, the Bristol scroll is a hugely important part of Bristol's more recent industrial history, all very much started on site here. Things like the Bristol Babe, again a Frank Barnwell concept, but this really was quite original at the time. So moving from military machines into a concept that essentially you could have in your garage, or so
that sort of burgeoning sort of civil hobbyist flying as well. It comes in the 20s, 30s, and it's functional, isn't it? It does what it says on the tin.
Fascinating. Model here of the Bristol Pullman triplane. The interesting thing about this is one of my favourite models in the museum, but this aeroplane was, I believe, the first aeroplane to have a fully enclosed fuselage section.
Okay.
And so you're moving from an era of people with their goggles and in the outside flow of the air, the kind of backlash against the fear of being in an enclosed kind of
you couldn't get out in case anything went terribly wrong.
Yeah, I mean, amazing. So Bristol very much at the forefront of some of the early civil aircraft. Got some lovely models, some big debates at the time, I think, in terms of how you stored the heritage. Airplanes take quite a lot of floor space.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of emphasis around models, and so sadly, a lot of those early aeroplanes, all we've got left is drawings, documentation, and models. We've seen a bit earlier about the engine side, but Roy Fedden, a key engineer in the history of Bristol, or a Bristol engines guy. Interestingly, from my personal perspective, is Roy Fedden was knighted in 1942 and became a lecturer at the Cranfield College of Aeronautics, which is where I work.
Yes, that sounds rather familiar. Lovely connection there.
Yeah, so hopefully, you start to get a feel of how we're kind of telling that story. Again, it's a great place just to look again at the building, the brick archways, these Belfast trusses is what makes this a listed building. Is beautiful, beautiful. Wing of a Bristol Bulldog. Good entry point into the 1940s.
Wasn't that the aircraft that Douglas Bader lost his legs in? Was it a Bulldog?
Was it really?
I think it might have been.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Somebody in the comments is probably going to correct me, but I think he was doing something a bit naughty at low level in one of those. But
no, certainly there's a hero.
Yes.
But, gosh, I didn't know that.
So I'm going to quietly look it up now and then find out that I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure it was a Bulldog. But anyway.
So as we move into the 1940s, Bristol played very much its part in the World War II activities. Very appropriate this year, VE, VJ, so commemorations. So we're telling the story here of how Bristol site was affected during those periods. It was very much a target from a bombing perspective. The site was bombed. We tell the story of Bristol in the Blitz.
So I think there was the big raid. Was it early September 40? They made the big raid on Bristol and Filton and
yeah. Again, showing some of the way people used to work, and young kids come in now and wow, a drawing board, wow, a set square. And I mean, that's amazing just how things have changed. I love this picture. During this period, then the company commandeered lots of different alternative spaces that could house their design offices and things like this. May not be instantly recognisable to you, but this is a swimming pool. You can still see the diving boards.
Oh yes.
Right, and commandeered for use as a design office. Lovely story of the innovative nature of using other buildings from a design perspective. Again, models and some of the Bristol aircraft of the era. The Bristol Blenheim we can maybe come back to a little bit, because the Bristol Bolingbroke, which is a Canadian-built derivative of the Blenheim, is one of our restoration projects at the moment.
And of course, fabulous bow fighter that it all sort of works its way across and up to. I have a painting on my wall of one of John Catside Cunningham taking down a HE-111. But
do you know who John Catside Cunningham's co-pilot was in the Comet? I've forgotten the name, but I met his daughter the other week.
Oh, brilliant!
And a real coincidence. So yeah, we're telling that story of the 1940s, the different sites around Bristol that were used for aerospace development. I love the cutaway of the Beaufighter here.
It looks a lot bigger when you're not in one. I got to climb in the one they have at the Moorabbin Museum in Melbourne.
Oh, right.
Which was fantastic, but it's just looking at that, thinking, oh, that looks quite big. No, I'm of course considerably wider than the chaps.
The hours of time that people spent in these confined spaces. Wow. So we start to come out of the 1940s, and so the UK had built up all this aerospace capability, and the industry of the day went to the government and said, well, look, how can we use that for economic advantage? And so the government of the day responded. There was a committee put in place under the leadership of Lord Brabazon, Brabazon Committee. Brabazon Committee came up with first 5 and 7 different specifications of aeroplanes that were going to help the UK lead the world in civil aerospace. And the first of those specifications, if we look at the model up there, was for a very large passenger aircraft called the Brabazon. And the government placed a contract for the design and build of the Brabazon here at Bristol, at Filton. And indeed, one of the legacies of that's what led to the destruction of a village, the Charlton village, the building and extension of a runway, the big hangars that were used to build Brabazon, subsequently used in the build of Concorde. 2 aircraft built, 1 flew. It flew at Farnborough. Sadly,
sorry, I'm just saying we had Alan Porter on the show recently.
Oh,
he did his book launch here, didn't he?
Yeah, he did his book launch here. Brilliant. Yeah. Not much left of the Brabazon. It was all cut up. It was all destroyed. So really, all that's left. We've got some wheels from a Brabazon, a kind of wheel for transport, pushing around inside the hangar itself. We've got a windshield, but not very much left of the Brabazon itself. But the legacy of the Brabazon to Bristol was a unique infrastructure and set of capabilities that was subsequently used.
Because it's, as we can see it there, because was it Brabazon recommendation 6 was the Britannia?
It was the Britannia.
Yeah, which I adore. I think it's possibly the best thing Bristol did. I'm going to throw that out.
Well, it was a beautiful aeroplane. Of course, it was, as you rightly say, one of the Brabazon committee recommendations. The other one is what effectively led to the Comet.
Yes.
And so Bristol was on the wrong side of the the dawn of the jet age. Yeah. In that regard. So beautiful aircraft. This forward fuselage section we've got was from the aircraft that ditched in the River Severn.
Oh, right, is it? Okay.
We can see a short video clip. Yes, you've got so it was an aircraft that was on flight test, and it ditched in the Severn. But this forward fuselage section is the section of the aircraft that sadly came down, but thankfully without any loss of lives.
Because my first job was working for Britannia Airways, which was founded because they were. Oh, there she is. Yeah. They started flying the Britannia, took the name for the airline, and by the time I got to it, it was 767s and 757s. But yeah.
Oh, interesting. How interesting. Yeah, no, lovely aeroplane. Love it. And a great Bristol, Bristol
fantastic,
product.
Yeah.
One of my favourite exhibits, Type 173, the UK's first twin-rotor helicopter. This was all done at Filton at Bristol before helicopters subsequently moved out of what subsequently became Westland and GKN, etc. But I love this as an exhibit. I think it's a really interesting, very thin, very slender product. Again, some lovely video footage of it in operation.
Because you've also got the cars. Because you have all of this aviation going on, and you've got Bristol producing some quite lovely motor cars at the same time.
This was the diversification, that this coming out with all that capability. How can that apply in other areas? So the Bristol car, I mean, is still legendary. These are collectors' items. This is a lovely, lovely cutaway section of a 403. I'm not an automotive expert by any means, but this is slightly reminiscent of an early BMW kind of setup. So it was those
That's the grill, and this was is it the 501, the BMW that's got that? So the round lights, yeah.
So it was the engineers. It was an engineer that came over from BMW that was working here. But you see the aerodynamic lines of the car. I mean, a beautiful example of aerospace technology feeding into to automotive, and the Bristol cars were all built on site. And as I say, real collector's items. Every now and then we will do a car display here.
Oh, and
we have all these Bristol cars lined up. It's fantastic.
And there's that Bloodhound we have behind us.
Yeah, so, Bristol, in developing all its capabilities, its industrial capabilities, was very much involved in defence. Activities. The Bristol Bloodhound missile is a real icon of the 50s, 60s. Much of the technology that was used in here around control systems subsequently fed into Concorde and things like that. It was the use of ramjets. It was, really, really a real Bristol icon project.
And of course, a partnership of two great aviation companies, Hawker and Bristol.
Yeah, so this is not a Bristol aeroplane, as you rightly point out, but the engine is absolutely a Bristol engine. So this partnership of Hawker and Bristol engines producing, in my mind, what was, as a young child, one of the most exciting aircraft of its time, to see a Harrier jump jet at an air show bowing to the audience. Will live with me forever.
I very fortunately, I was doing aviation studies at East Surrey College. And in our first year there, we got invited to go to Dunsfold for the last batch of FRS-2s that were going to go out to India. It was the last production run at Dunsfold, so they got to let us sit in the ones before they went out. So I have a soft spot for that, for the greatest school trip I ever went on. But it is exactly that. The engine is key. The airframe makes the engine do what it needs to do, and that fantastic partnership between the two.
Just from a museum, a little anecdotal story from a museum perspective. So this was part of the Bristol Aero Collection. We were storing it in the hangars the other side of a runway. And when the museum was opening and we were moving the exhibits across, how do we get this across here? Well, we had a Chinook actually airlift it from that side of a runway to this side of a runway, and that was a sight.
So it was
a story about the museum in its own right.
The Pima Air and Space Museum in Tucson, Arizona is home to one of the largest non-government funded aviation and space museums in the world. Featuring nearly 400 aircraft, the museum is home to an incredible collection like NASA's NB-52 X-15 dropship and 747 SP Sophia Airborne Observatory, to a wealth of rare military types from air forces all around the world, to the first production 777. Whether you're a military or civilian aviation geek, there will be an incredible aircraft around every corner of this epic 80-acre site for you to explore. As the Aviation Show's partnership with the Pima Air and Space Museum enters its third year, we're delighted to say that Pima is truly a top of your bucket list museum to visit. And it keeps getting better, as this year the Tucson Military Vehicle Museum will be opening right next door. To find out more about the incredible collection and the fantastic events coming up at the Pima Air and Space Museum, and of course the Tucson Military Vehicle Museum, head over to www.pimaair.org to plan your trip to one of the world's great aviation collections, and one that now includes tanks next door, if that's your sort of thing.
The icon, in my view, of the Bristol engines, the Bristol Siddeley Olympus engine, the Rolls-Royce Olympus engine that subsequently went on to power Concorde. Again, a lovely cutaway section of the the engine here.
Not wanting to sort of poke the bear, Ian, but do you think the mergers in the 60s that led to the Rolls-Royce that we know now, do you think that sort of made it a little bit more tricky to remind people that this was all Bristol, not just Rolls-Royce? Because you think of, whenever the Concorde is mentioned now, with the Vulcan, it's Rolls-Royce is mentioned as the engines. Do you think that nature of the amalgamation that was required in the late 60s has maybe made the history a little bit more difficult to follow for the average aviation fan?
The easy answer is yes. I think it's made it a lot more difficult. Bottom line was, we've just walked through some of the very early days of a Bristol Aero company that had, an airframe company and an engine company that all fitted together. But the way the industry evolved, then Rolls-Royce, who acquired the company in mid-60s, 1966, tended to go down the road of Bristol was a defence engine division, Derby became their big civil engine division, whereas the airframe side of things was on the civil side. So although you had two of the biggest aerospace companies within 500 metres of each other, they were actually in very different business sectors, and so there was this diversification, I would say, and for me it's a tragedy. If I look at early pictures of Toulouse, round about the development days of Concorde, and I look at aerial pictures of Filton, the two are on a par. Biggest runway, well, one of the biggest runways in the UK, great engine company, great airframe company here in Bristol. You look at the same aerial picture now of Toulouse, and you look at the aerial picture here.
What might have been?
Yes. That for me is the big what might have been sliding doors moment. That sliding door moment led to Rolls-Royce going in a different direction here in Bristol to the airframe side of things. And it does mean it's a harder story to tell in an integrated way.
But it's just coming back to Olympus, it does make me smile that Sir Stanley Hooker escapes Rolls-Royce, comes to Bristol, creates all these fabulous engines, and then ends up back at Rolls-Royce.
Sense of irony, isn't there, in all of that? We won't go into it too much, but I mean, people don't always recognise the great work that Bristol had in the early space days, development of satellites, development the the Skylark rocket. But if we kind of wander down here, for example, the model here of Giotto. This was the Halley's interceptor for Halley's Comet. A lot of people know about Giotto. Never realised it was built here in Bristol. And there's still quite a strong space cluster here in the Bristol area. But sadly, BAE Systems closed its space division and moved it to Stevenage and Portsmouth. But the story, the space story here at Bristol is a really, really big story to tell. So I'm just giving you a bit of a snapshot.
This is fantastic. There's so much to see. And
we'll go and see Concorde in a wee minute. My kind of anecdotal story of the museum is people come to Aerospace Bristol to see Concorde. It's unique, it's well known, it's fantastic. Not knowing anything about the Bristol story. And they wander through here, looking at all the exhibits, the photos, the products, the people, and they come back, wow, did that really happen in Bristol? And that for me is what the big takeaway I think people got. I did not know so much happened and was developed here in Bristol.
And that's why it's a perfect site for it, because you're here, the Brab hangars are just over the other side of the airfield. We're within walking distance of all of this being created.
It's just such a great story. Anyway, we start to move out to the 70s, move into the 80s. Again, some interesting interesting stories. This is a fuselage section from the BAE 146. Again, it's not a Bristol aeroplane per se, but the centre fuselage section was assembled and built here at Filton. This is a lovely exhibit, and you kind of look this way, and you can, as a
Everybody
passenger,
recognises that.
you can broadly recognise what's going on here. I mean, there's still those wow moments, and you see all the cabling and things like that. You turn around this way, and the reaction of people is, wow, is that all that separates us from the outside world? And it's so I think there's that contrast between these two sections is a lovely piece.
146 was a great little aircraft. And
It wasn't so great if you were in seat row 9, which is where the
the spar went across.
the spar went across. But I remember I loved it. It was a great aeroplane. Of course, it was built for hot and high, short takeoff, and landing that. Yes, I think it was a great program. But this is the A320 wing. Great thing about this exhibit here is a little game for the children to play about flaps and slats configurations and getting them to understand what's happening in cruise, what's happening at takeoff, landing.
Oh, there goes the slats, Oh,
Kids have
fantastic
obviously
fun.
selected the flap slat configuration. And then telling the story of the future is something we'd like to do. We'd like to do it a wee bit stronger, if truth be known. But of course, the future is what a lot of companies want to keep quite close to their chests. But you think of the Bristol area. You've got Vertical Aerospace here. You've got Aeralis here. You've got Zero Avia just up the road at Kemble. So there's a whole load of new things happening in the region. And this is the mock-up from Aeralis. So Aeralis are developing a solution which effectively is a next-generation trainer aircraft requirement. This is the exhibit they've used in air shows around the world. And so, it's our way of kind of telling the story of the future. So Aeralis is a company that is based just on the Bristol, just on the science park next to here. So again, very local company to the museum.
Well, I think they should be flying soon as well, shouldn't they? In theory.
It's not for me to be a spokesman for the company. They keep things quite close to their chest. They're working very close with a number of overseas bodies. They work with the RAF. And it'd be lovely to see an indigenous, UK indigenous product fulfil that requirement.
It's a very clever idea.
And the chief executive of the company worked for Airbus in his early days, and he saw the modular approach to Airbus civil aeroplanes, and he said, why can't we apply that kind of same modular approach in the world of military trainer aircraft? And so he's taken that to Aeralis.
Well,
anyway, so we've done a walk through the Bristol story from the beginning through to the current day. What I was going to do now is we'll just walk over and we'll see Concorde.
Definitely. Well, it's a beautiful day. It does actually have summer in England sometimes, which is fantastic. Even in Scotland,
Yeah, even in Scotland.
And I guess this is, sort of a bit of the jewel in the collection in here.
Yeah, so this is what people around the world want to come and see. So this is the home of Concorde 216. Concorde 216 was the last Concorde to be built here in the UK. It was the last Concorde to fly. It was indeed the last full aeroplane to be built here in Bristol. But Concorde 216 has got some other interesting stories as well, some of which we'll see when we go inside. We made a decision that we wanted to house Concorde in a standalone building. We wanted it to be all about Concorde, and so we built this as a new build. We couldn't quite afford the big iconic buildings that those in the finance industry or whatever can often do. But it's a building that shows Concorde off to its greatest extent, to some great signature views. Let's go in.
That's super. So you've got Bristol Aircraft Company, the history over here, and it leads to this. Yeah.
And don't forget, Concorde, the original specification for Concorde was done in the second half of the 1950s. There are minutes of those very first Concorde supersonic meetings at 1956. Certainly by 1959, that's closer to the Wright brothers, and certainly closer to those Bristol box kite that we were talking about than it is to today's A350 aeroplane. So anyway, here we are, Concorde 216.
People sometimes complain that they understand where their greenhouse and they get this proven what they're going to do and paying gas in their greenhouse.
So this is all about Concorde. This is not filling the space full of things. It's about showing Concorde off to the fullest extent that we can. We've got lovely graphics along the side telling some of the Concorde story. We'll walk past the engine intake and see that, because we tell the story there of how the air slows down from twice the speed of sound to hit that front engine face subsonically. But what a beautiful, beautiful aircraft this is. And these are people queuing to go on and just see the aeroplane. But what staggers me is young children come in and see this and see it as a bit of science fiction. This did something 30 years ago that we can't do today. It's just
it is
just
science
amazing.
fiction, though, isn't it? The lines on it, everything is just. It still seems futuristic, even though it's. It's nearly a 70-year-old aircraft now, isn't it?
69 is when it flew. 1969 when it flew. So, work that through 56 years since it flew. The design was 10 years before that. This is well in advance of any of the high performance computing or digital capabilities we had. I mean, it's again the evolution from the Wright brothers' first flight, the Bristol box kite's first flight, to this in less than 50 years is just mind blowing.
It's wild.
And it just shows you what people can do. It shows you the power of human endeavour when you take away some of the... And it was not a project without political or admin constraints. I mean, it was an Anglo-French project. But it just shows you what engineers can do, given the headroom to do it.
Yes. And I love the way you have people walk in right under the nose. There's something about that view as you look down with that beautiful wing, the Ogilvy wing, and that's nice. I like that, because if you're going to walk in, you just want to be sort of confronted by what is a work of art.
Yeah, it is a work of art, and there's so many stories behind this in its own right. We can stand under the engine over there. David McMurtry was a young engineer at Rolls-Royce working on the Concorde engine, developed a sensor, asked Rolls-Royce if he could take the patent, work outside Rolls-Royce on it. They did that. David McMurtry went on to form Renishaw, one of the world's leading instrumentation company. All started with a sensor, under Concorde. Some of the suppliers that were involved. I mean, a lot of the technology, the carbon brake kind of technology. It was really, really quite revolutionary at the time. This is my favourite part, though. The air intake. For me, this is what made Concorde work. where others failed. And it was, how do you get air coming in at twice the speed of sound into the air intake, and by the time it hits the front face of the engine, as I say, it's subsonic. And the graphic here, it kind of shows the speed, changing speed, the increase in Mach number here, it's going up, and the ramps, the way the ramps are deployed to slow the air down. You see, there's quite a lot of air actually going outside of the fan itself. In fact, you almost didn't need the engines at twice the speed of sound. Just the compressed air itself was almost enough to keep the aeroplane flying.
And it's how it slows it all down in about 12 feet.
Yeah.
It's just wild, yeah.
And again, this was all done by young engineers without the aid of computers, without the aid of modern CFD analysis, computational flow dynamics or anything. I mean, it's just, this, as I said, I think this is the crown jewel of Concorde from a technology point of view. And I love the way it's demonstrated.
That's fab. Just with your other hat on and your young engineers at Cranfield, how do they view aircraft like Concorde now? Because being of an age that it used to fly over my house on a Sunday every week as it came off the Biggin Hill stack. That's my sort of memories, it diverting into Gatwick and us all rushing out of the office so we could stand around as it blasted off down the runway. For the generation that never got to see aircraft like this fly, how do they view it? How do they take that into the careers that they want to do?
It's a really, really good question. I mean, they ask why? Why could we do it then and we can't do it now? Because let's be candid, the technology does exist for us to do that. I mean, we know some of the challenges, the sonic boom over land, lots of money being spent, particularly in the US, on trying to solve that issue. My view is every 10 years people ask the same question. Can there be a successor to Concorde? And every 10 years there's a series of attempts to do that. All conclude that technologically it's possible. But can you make the business case work? Yeah. Can you make the sustainability, the environmental side of it work? So they all fall at that kind of hurdle. But at some point, somebody's going to crack that, and there will be a next generation supersonic. I don't know when. I also doubt that it will be an aircraft as big as Concorde. I mean, Concorde replacement aircraft was going to be even bigger than this. I worked on a Mach 3 300 passenger aircraft in partnership with Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Tupolev, the Japanese, the French. And technically we could make it happen, but we couldn't make the business case work. You might be able to make the business case work in more of a business jet side of things, but business jets could fall foul of all the environmental politics of envy kind of arguments. So my view is technically it could happen. The youngsters see this, and there's an envy. Young, older people were working on projects like this. Why can't we do it? So I think it's something that will continually motivate youngsters to try and look for new solutions. But it's lovely.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. And what a wonderful home for it. So this is a fitting place to wrap it up because we have to let you go. Iain, thank you so much. And it's lovely to finally meet you in person after all these years. So thank you for showing us around the museum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next part of our tour of Aerospace Bristol, where we check out the return to public display of the Rolls-Royce Aerospace Collection. I'd like to say thanks to all of our fantastic supporters over on Patreon. If you head over to our Patreon page, you can join the fun from just £3 a month plus a bit of VAT, get your name in these very credits, and get all the episodes ad-free and early as soon as I get the edit finished. The Aviation Show is hosted and produced by Matt Bone and is a Boney Abroad production.